Ethan Price had never been one to quit. Even when his wife passed 3 winters ago, leaving him with 2 little ones, Mia, 7, and Lucas, 5, he worked double shifts at the factory, cooked their meals, checked their homework, and somehow still managed to tuck them in at night with a bedtime story. But tonight, his body gave out before his spirit did. On his way home from yet another grueling 12-hour shift, Ethan stumbled into their small apartment, still wearing his steel-toe boots, his hands blackened by grease. He felt lightheaded, but he didn't think much of it, just exhaustion, he told himself. The rent was overdue again, and there was no time for weakness. That's when it happened. Halfway across the living room, his knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the worn-out carpet. His world spun into darkness. When he came to, he didn't open his eyes right away. The room was quiet except for the faintest whispering. From the bedroom, he heard Mia's soft voice, choked with tears. "Sorry, Mom, we'll be good now, we promise." Ethan froze. His chest tightened with a pain far worse than exhaustion. He got to his feet, dizzy but determined, and followed the sound to the cracked bedroom door. Inside, his kids sat huddled on the bed, clutching an old photograph of their mother. Mia's little arms wrapped protectively around Lucas, who was crying silently. "We'll be good now," Mia repeated, her voice shaking. "Maybe then Daddy won't leave too." Ethan's breath caught. They thought he might leave them too. And all this time, he thought he was being strong for them, working himself to the bone, skipping meals, never letting them see him cry. He thought that was what it meant to be a good father. But seeing them now, terrified and broken, he realized how wrong he'd been. He walked into the room, his knees still weak. Mia. Lucas. Their heads snapped up. He fell to his knees before them, pulling them both into his arms. They buried their faces in his chest, sobbing. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. "I promise you. I'm right here. And I'm not leaving you. Ever." The 3 of them stayed there for what felt like forever, holding on to each other as though the world outside no longer existed. That night, Ethan made a decision. The next morning, he called in sick for the first time in years. He made pancakes for breakfast, burnt on the edges, but the kids didn't care. He walked them to school, holding their little hands tight. And on his way home, he stopped by the community center. He'd heard they offered support for single parents, counseling, resources, even job retraining programs with more flexible hours. It wasn't easy to ask for help. But he did. Because he finally understood, what his children needed most wasn't just food on the table or a roof over their heads. They needed him. His presence. His love. His laughter. And somehow, that made him stronger than he'd ever been before. Months later, things began to change. Ethan found a new job at the local school district as a maintenance worker, with better hours and weekends off. He volunteered to help coach Little League on Saturdays. He even started attending parenting workshops. But most importantly, he came home every night in time for bedtime stories. Mia and Lucas started smiling more. They slept peacefully again, no longer clutching that old photograph in fear of being abandoned. One quiet evening, after he tucked them in, Ethan stood by their doorway and just watched them sleep. His heart was full. Sometimes, he thought, it wasn't about how much you could carry. It was about knowing what to put down, so you could hold on to what really mattered. Because in the end, love wasn't measured by how hard you worked, but by how fiercely you showed up. And Ethan would always show up. No matter how hard life gets, remember, your presence is the greatest gift you can give to the ones you love. Never underestimate the power of simply being there.